Good morning.
Good morning.
Actually, I got a mail saying that the session has been rescheduled to Monday, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. after our first scheduling mail came. I
So
hope
it
all
means
of you would have got.
there is no session today.
Yeah, that's what it seems to be. Just check your mail because I was also thinking whether there's going to be a session or not.
So,
No, but sir, around 43, 44 people have joined. I have not received any email. 48 as mentioned.
sir, we got one mail, but that is regarding to machine learning course.
Which machine learning course are you attending? Any machine learning course, sir?
No, sir. Then also we get a mail from
I will.
code team.
Yeah, I guess that mail is wrong and inadvertently sent to Argo. I guess that mail has been sent mistakenly to Argo.
So that is a confusion, sir.
Actually, good morning. Actually, in the NPTL message used to come. In that, still today is a
Yes, sir.
training,
Yes, yes,
interaction.
sir. Yes, sir.
There is not
This is
further update.
They are
Yeah.
joining. Okay.
no. This is. I have joined with my mail, just to show you the mail.
Okay. So, does anyone of us
Any?
contact of the
Sir,
faculty?
there is mention MLP, that is
MLP is
machine
machine
learning
learning
program.
programming.
Na?
Yes.
Okay. Fine. Then maybe it is
The
wrongly
course number is also and this
But why are we
CS
getting machine
2008.
learning
So
programming
that
announcements? No?
Okay. Sorry.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Hello. Is anyone had done an assignment? Actually, I am facing a problem in selecting the assignment.
I've not
I did
submitted
the
it.
first
What is your
assignment.
question? What is your question?
So while selecting the option, so there is a multiple option. I'm not able to select the multiple option. One option, another option just disappear.
No,
Sir,
no. If
multiple
it's a
options
radio
are there
button, if
for
it's a,
few questions, not for all the
I
questions.
think if the option is a circle, which is a radio button, I think then there is only one right answer.
Yes, yes.
If you look at the assignment number 2, the last 2 questions, the choices
sir.
are squares. There you can actually pick multiple choices. So, and I think assignment 1, there are no multiple
I'm talking
correct answers. There's only 6.
about, sir,
In
assignment 1.
I don't believe there are any multiple correct answers. There's only one correct answer for all questions. This is my understanding.
Okay. And sir, is it like there is no submit button
No,
or
if you complete,
there is
if you
no
go,
next button? So like it's appear like only one
there's no next button.
Button
There's just a
submit last.
submit
I have
button at the end of the
submitted my
last
yoga
question.
assignment.
appear in my that is my point. Sir, there is only one question, so I'm not able
Right.
to go for the next screen. That is the if I'm selecting one button and then I'm not able to go to the next
Sir, will this video
or the
If you
next
scroll,
question.
be
keep
available
scrolling,
for us
scrolling,
after
there
the
are
course
pages.
also?
There are about 18 questions, I think. There are about 18 questions. If you keep scrolling, it will come.
Correct.
And towards the very end, there is a submit button.
Correct.
Kumarji, you reload
So
the.
that after one question, when I am selecting one, sorry, sir.
You reload the page. All questions you can scroll actually initially before giving the answers. You can scroll down
Okay,
and
I'm
see that
reloading
there is
right
a
now, sir.
submit
Once
button.
again. Okay, I'm reloading right now. It will. Thank you.
And which browser are you using? I don't think there might be a browser issue, but just to be sure.
Sir, will those video be available for us
No.
after the course end, or we will not be have the access to these videos?
I don't think we'll have access after completion of the course.
Okay, so we have to take our notes by watching the video. It means look like.
That's correct.
Okay, so good morning, everyone. If I may jump in, I am actually Madhavan number 3. So I'm one of the instructors for this couple of presentations. So I was invited to be part of this interaction and also take questions on the couple of presentations that I did. So I was, I think a few other instructors might also join. So just to clarify, I'm not from NPTEL or I'm not part of this organizing team. So my role is quite limited in terms of answering your questions on the two presentations that I did. And I was told that at 11 we will have one more, another Professor Santosh Sahu also joining. So what we will do is, so you must have already gone through the presentations, at least the ones that I presented, and we can have a kind of an interaction. I don't see it as a Q&A. I would rather look at it as a free-flowing conversation, wherein you can shoot your questions, and I will try to answer it to the best of my knowledge. So that is what I just wanted to kickstart this interaction. So before, the way I will do it is I'll just give a brief introduction about myself. You might have seen me already for an hour. And I'll give a brief introduction about myself, and then I'll you can start asking your questions. So before I go further, any comments or anything you want to clarify?
Wait, so fana já ka perdal.
Sorry? Yeah, any questions before we start? Yes, please. I think SS48. I can't see anyone's name. I think a few I can see the names, but most others it's showing SS.
Actually,
So,
I had put up a question
okay.
on how to change the display to our name. There has been no response.
Okay.
That
so
is,
yeah, I think someone from NPTEL team might be able to help out on that.
yeah, that is true. But it's to the course admin I am addressing this question. Obviously, even the professors or the people who answer us, would not be able to see the name.
Yeah,
It becomes a
exactly.
little odd. That is one.
Absolutely.
Second is, I have a question which right now I put in the text box also. Last week I had requested that is it possible to share the presentations which are as videos? So it will be we will be able to go through it at a leisurely pace and redo the thing. Going to the video, we need to check the timings and go back. That's a bit of a difficulty. So I'm asking and requesting that if it can be shared, it will be very useful to all the people who attend this course.
Yeah, I agree. So what I will do is I will pass on this request to the School of Sustainability team, because I don't know the technicalities of the logistics part of it. So let me note it down.
Thank you.
Yeah. So in that case, we can start.
Just one question.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, sir. This is Anup, sir. So just to let me know how to connect with a technical person, because I'm still facing the assignment issue. So let me know how to connect with a technical person. I put a message in a group. Still, somebody has guided me, but it's still not appearing in my assignment. I am getting only one question in my screen in assignment one.
Okay.
So can you suggest me to whom can I connect a technical person?
Okay. So you're saying you're unable to access assignment? Is it the question?
I am
He is
able
able
to
to
access the assignment, but in assignment page, I can see the only one question.
Okay.
And there's no button, nothing is like the scroll. I'm talking to a scroll. I refresh that one. Again, relog in. Nothing is happening. That is the mic.
Okay, fine.
Anup, I guess there's a lady named Amruta Narayanan who has been communicating to us, and also she was the one who were guiding us on the first day about discussing the course contents and all. So you can write a mail to her, and she might respond. And we, like all of us, have received the mails.
Anup, this is Venkat. You can also try one thing. It's not the page problem. Wherever the questions are visible to you, you keep the cursor there and keep pressing the down arrow. You will be able to navigate to the last question also. In fact, initially I also faced the problem, but later on when I just moved the cursor in the display area and kept pressing the
Okay.
down arrow, I was able to read 20 questions. Please try this before writing a mail to Anup.
Okay, I'll do that.
Good morning, sir. Good morning, sir.
Yeah, sorry.
I am.
Sorry, Dr. Sorry, Doctor. Just to interrupt. So I see a lot of people who are able to change their names. I think they're able to put their real name. I mean, their names. So maybe like Dr. Pradeep, I can see the name Mr. Kalyan Vaidyanathan, Mr. Anup Kumar. So I think were you able to add your name when you logged in? How were you able to do that?
No,
I think I guess they have joined using their personal ID. That's why only Peter Jacob, I see that he has joined.
So
from his
there is an option.
so Peter can help.
Yeah, actually we have joined as a power.
Okay.
Personal
There is
ID.
an
That's
option
why
on
my
the
name is appearing.
Gmail, on the option on the Gmail ID, where if you go to the settings, there is an option where you can add your name. You can also add your, your SS95 is mine. You can add that as a prefix or a suffix.
I didn't get it. Can you just repeat the way you have done?
If you go to the Gmail account of the ID that was being created,
Okay.
there is an option when you go to the settings, there is an option where you can add your name.
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Rajaram has
You
just
just
shared
get
a
the
link.
first
You can just click on that. You will be able to do that in the chat
Okay,
box.
fine. Thank you.
Okay, so can we then get into the discussion part of ESG, or at least my part? Yeah, I think a couple of you have raised your questions. Yeah, so Mr. Thirumurugan Rajaram.
Yeah, good morning, everyone, and good morning, Mr. Madhavan. In the climate-related risk and opportunities, the module which I could go through this week, in which you had one category which we call the reputation, where probably like growing reputation will have a huge impact on the stakeholders, and the lenders and consumers. Probably like how this measurement is there something like reputation is being a character one, and how measurement of this index or something which can either you can able to reflect from a profit scenario or on a sustainability scenario, like which one we can give a weightage when this entire topic related to ESG. What is the preference in the coming years, we can say?
Okay, so thank you for the question. So before I answer the question, let me just give a little bit of context. I will give a little bit of my background so that I can also maybe tailor your questions, or you will also get a better idea about what I can answer and where I come from. So I've been in the energy sector, energy now environment sector for about 20 years, 22 years now. So I started my career in a fossil fuel company. So I started my career in Indian Oil, and I was there for about 5.5 years. And post that, I switched to the green energy side of it. So I have worked a lot in solar energy, wind. I worked in e-mobility, and of late I have also worked in a little bit in green hydrogen. I wouldn't say a lot of work, but it's a new area. So that is my kind of functional background or domain expertise. When it comes to a little bit of academic expertise, I'm an engineer, mechanical engineer, and then I did my MBA in the US, and right now I'm about to complete my PhD in IIT Madras, and I do some work closely with the School of Sustainability, and my area of PhD thesis is on sustainability. And I'm doing it it's a joint program with University of with a German university. So in my past 5-6 years, I've been focusing a lot on ESG, the ESG regulations, and so on and so forth. So that's and I also am a co-founder of a German company, which is based in, of course, obviously in Germany, where we help companies in Germany and more widely Europe in doing their sustainability reporting, corporate sustainability reporting. So if you look at Germany, or rather, sorry, Europe, so they're one of the pioneers when it comes to setting all these regulations and reporting mandates. So in 2000, after this Paris Climate Agreement and the UN SDGs, approval of UN SDGs by all countries, so there has been a lot of regulation. So there has been a big shift when it comes to corporate, you can call social responsibility or corporate non-financial performance. Because prior to that, it was seen as corporate social responsibility was seen as good to have, like to answer to relating to your question, to the question of reputation. So if you are seen as a good citizen, or if you're seen as someone who is doing a good for the society, that helped in improving the reputation. So when you have an improved reputation, that helps. You can argue that it's more of a greenwashing thing, in the sense when you say greenwashing, it means that you're doing things only to show off, which is a real issue. I mean, we don't want to. The idea is not to say that to be serious. It's not about putting some PR work and doing some show off. So it was seen that way. Of course, there are companies who are doing real work. A lot of them were doing it from the perspective of creating a good image, good reputation. But since, at least in Europe, after 2015 and 2016 or 15, so in 2017, a rule came into effect which said that companies have to report uh, the ESG performance. But again, it was a bit vague in the sense they only asked for some qualitative information. So the companies have to report on what they are doing to take care of the environment, sustainability, social issues, and governance. But they didn't put any detailed specification. It was not very prescriptive in terms of what kind of metrics they should report, what are the targets they should set, what kind of KPIs are to be taken care of. So it was very easy for companies to just write some nice sounding words and say they did this and that. But then, in order to address that issue, in last year, the European Union came up with something new called CSRD, which is Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. So in that, they have added it much more, a lot granular in terms of not only qualitative information but also quantitative information. So that is so. So the Europe has been setting the kind of they've been pioneering in this kind of regulations. But when it comes to India, I'm sure you would have had a module on BRSR, where the top 1,000 companies have to now report as per SBI, and they're also fairly detailed, but not as detailed as the CSRD in Europe. So this is kind of the backdrop. Now, coming to the specific question about reputation. So reputation is kind of, if you look at from an ESG perspective, it is a S path, where it is a social dimension or a social pillar, where reputation, how it has an impact is anyone likes to do business with someone who they see as a trusted partner. Trust is very important in business, and they would also like to be associated with companies or individuals who are seen as trustworthy and who are seen as positive in a positive light, or in another sense, don't want to be working for a company. I mean, all of us, including me as an employer or an employee, I would like to work, as an employee, I would like to work for a company uh, who is seen as doing a part of a good citizen in the society, right? So that helps from one part is that it helps in terms of employee attracting employees. Because again, there is this financial part, of course, the salaries matter, but once that salary, after a point, the salaries are, you want something beyond that. You want to be seen as being proud of the organization that you work with, right? So in that sense, reputation helps a lot. Second dimension can be that in the wider society. So if you're in a if you have a factory which is polluted a lot, that can lead to a problem in the neighborhood. So people can come and complain. It can end up in problems. The operations itself can become a problem. Like some cases, there have been Coca-Cola as an example. In some cases, there have been a lot of unrest when it comes to the fact that they were seen as taking more groundwater than they were putting back. So this had an issue in the local community because there was this competition for groundwater. So this turned out to be a major challenge. So in that sense, reputation is very important. Now the question then is, how do you measure reputation? Well, of course, it's a qualitative metric. One way companies, or rather one way the stakeholder, if it's a listed company, so one way a reputation of a listed company can be measured. I can't say measured. You can kind of get an indication is through the kind of a press you get. Are there any controversies? So if you look at ESG ratings, so the ESG ratings providers, they have this one category called ESG reputation score, which means that the way they do is they take all the press releases or whatever is coming in the media, social media, for example. I mean, today it's very easy to lose reputation. So because we have this boycott culture and we have all these things, wherein one wrong thing, or if you are perceived, if I mean, anyone can escalate something, and if it goes viral, you lose a reputation, right? And it's a damage control after that. So these kind of ESG controversies, these ESG ratings companies, they keep track of that, and then they give some weightage to that, some value to that, and they integrate that into the ESG score broadly. So it is not a scientific. I mean, there is no scientific way of measuring reputation, at least right now. So it's a question of I think to some extent it's a sense, and second is also avoiding controversies in a way, right? So these are so bottom line is there's no scientific way of measuring reputation. It has to be felt, or it is more of a perception to it. So I hope I had answered the question, Mr. Thirumari.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Madhavan. It was clear.
Okay. So I think four people have raised their hands. Maybe you can start with SS20. I don't know who's, if you could introduce yourself.
Hello, so good morning. Good morning, all. This is Sri Ganesh from TNP Tech. So my question is, in your module, you talked about climate scenario analysis, right?
Yeah.
And you have used that TCFD recommendation.
Correct.
So will the course will also tell us how a company or an organization can achieve a decarbonization strategy plan also?
I think the course again. I'm taking care of only of the this part, but having seen the course curriculum of the syllabus, I think this is more of an introductory course. So if you want to go more in detail, you can actually go to TCFD itself, because TCFD has a lot of free certifications. I mean, they're very easy to. They're very easy in the sense you can do it at your own pace, and they're very easy to get the certification. I mean, easy in the sense I'm saying if you understand the concepts well, it's quite good. But I don't think that is part of this particular course, because decarbonization strategy is something very vast by itself. So it includes your energy mix in terms of renewable energy, what percentage of it is that, your energy efficiency, what kind of energy efficiency interventions you are doing, how are you reducing your fuel mix, and all those kind of stuff. So to answer your question, I don't think that's really part of this, other than sensitizing, giving a overview about the importance of that and how the decarbonization strategy is part of this entire sustainability, the theme of sustainability.
Okay, sir. Okay,
So,
thank you.
yeah, so if you're interested in getting deeper into the scenario analysis, actually there is one certification only for scenario analysis. So a lot of the content that I took is from TCFD, obviously. But here the idea was to, given that it is a short presentation, so I just took I tried to condense it and give an overview of what it is, what the idea is. Yeah.
Okay, sir. Yeah, and again, for whoever has joined, like for my fellow learners, have joined in their personal email ID. I think I got a mail from NPTEL saying you should join only in the official email ID, otherwise attendance will not be marked. Maybe they can rejoin with that person. Just in general information. Thank you.
Good morning, Professor.
Yeah, hi.
Ravichander.
Yes.
And good morning, team. Professor, this is related to the reporting and disclosures. Since you are talking about BRSR and the CSRD, see, one of my customers, they are based in India, and they have customers in Europe.
Mhm.
Now, if they have to report to India, they have to use a BRSR, and to the European customer, they have to give a CSRD. So, if there are different frameworks, where is the commonality of reporting and disclosure, or is there duplication of reports?
Yeah, it's a good question, Mr. Ravichander. May I know which company you represent?
This is my own company. I have a own consulting company.
Okay. Yeah. So it is about the jurisdiction, right? So if your client is, so it's again the listing. So if the company is listed in, let's say, in any of the European stock exchanges and they're domiciled there, they definitely have to report on the CSRD. I mean, again, not every company has to report CSRD, but most of the listed companies come within this mandate, and there are also those thresholds in terms of employees, in terms of revenue, in terms of assets. So around 50,000 companies in Europe are coming under CSRD. Now, if they are not listed in India, and if they are even if they are listed, if they're not in the top 1,000, then they don't have to report under PSRS. So it's a question of the listing and domicile. So I don't know the size of your company. So if you, I mean, it depends upon their these factors, domicile and the listing.
Yes, Professor. So my company, we are service providers. We do the system implementation for our customers. So our customers, they are listed in India, and their customer in Europe, they are listed there in Europe. So in fact, as recent yesterday's discussion, when we were discussing, there was something called CBAM as also, which came up. So
Yeah.
CBAM reporting. So
yeah, CBAM is something different. So that is carbon border adjustment mechanism. So that is mainly meant for. So if you're an exporter to Europe, then you have to give the you have to disclose how much of the carbon, the what do you call that? It's embedded
emission
emissions. Yeah. So what is the
process.
emissions related to your product? life cycle, life cycle emissions.
Emissions.
Yeah. So then there are some certain thresholds, and based on the thresholds and everything, there are different dynamics. But that's a different regulation. So if you look at Europe, there are maybe 10, 15 regulations, which are all kind of linked by a broad theme, but they are all have a different purpose. So in this particular case, what you're talking about, CBAM, is different from CSRD. And in your case, another case is, like you said, that your customer is an Indian listed company, whereas their customer is a European company. So it's very simple. So the Indian company, if they are among the top 1,000, they will report under BRSR, and the European customer, they will report under CSRD.
Okay. So just to understand in better, Professor, so between BRSR and CSRD, is there a commonality, or there should be two different reports? No, just for my understanding.
Yeah. So the issues will be kind of same. Like broadly same. But ESRS is a lot more detailed. So they have like more than 1,000 data points. Right? So
Okay.
of course, not everything is applicable for every company, but every company has to first decide on which of those. There is something called materiality, right? So they go by the before they start reporting under CSRD. So they have to do something called a double materiality assessment, which means that they have to first conduct a stakeholder engagement, stakeholder interaction, and they identify the topics which are material to them. And then after that, once they identify the material topics, then they have to choose which of the data points are relevant for those material issues, and then they start collecting data and start reporting on that. So in that sense, the CSRD is much more detailed, and it is a lot more, at least for the first time, it can be quite challenging. Whereas when it comes to BRSR, I think that the SEBI has already given a certain format, and the KPIs and other things given. So it's much easier, I would say. The BRSR is a lot easier compared to reporting on the CSRD. While broad themes are the same. Okay, environment. Okay, what percent of your energy mix is renewable? What is your emission intensity? What is your water consumption? So how are you treating your waste? Material usage. So those are broadly, topics are the same, but the kind of or even the social part, you have to answer about what is the gender diversity, the board diversity, and a lot of similar topics. But the difference lies in the fact that to what detail that you go. So in terms of metrics, KPIs and metrics, and to what, how many points that you kind of report on. So I think that's a key difference.
Okay, thank you, Professor.
So I think Mr. Vineet.
Hi sir, this is Vineet. So in one of the lectures we're talking about.
Sorry?
Yes, in one of the lectures you were talking about TCFD, right? So let's assume that I am the practitioner who is doing this climate scenario analysis for my company. So the thing is, I'm supposing that they are using this global climate models. Based upon that data set, we are doing a lot of scenario analysis. These global climate models are generally at a spatial resolution of, let's say, 50 to 100 kilometers, right? So does TCFD give some guidelines on how do I downscale the data so that I can understand how that future climatic condition is going to affect my physical asset at a much finer levels? So does that information is provided by TCFD?
No. So what TCFD is, the guideline that TCFD gives is to it's more of a reference. So they say that okay, there are publicly available data sets, climate data sets like the one we just talked about, or you can even create your own data models, right? So it's all up to you. So it's easier to start with something that's already there, and creating your own model depends upon how much resource you have, how big of a company it is, and whether that's required also. So TCFD leaves the discretion to the reporting company, so it is up to them, right? Because again, like you said, it also depends upon to what granular level you want to go to, and the other thing is, it's at the end of the day, why are we doing scenario analysis? We are doing it because future is unpredictable. So a lot of assumptions also come into play. So when you do each of these scenarios, you have to take some assumptions. And what you have right now, and it's a lot of modeling, very intricate modeling, very complex modeling, where each one, if you give each modeler will have a slightly different assumption, and the assumptions when you spread it over a 20-year period, 30-year period, that will add up to, and completely you'll get a completely different scenario. So to answer your question, no, TCFD doesn't really give. It's not very prescriptive in that sense. What data set or climate model that you use, the only thing is, whatever modeling that you do or whatever scenario that you come up with, it should be, you should be able to give the reasoning logic very clearly. Okay, you put this and you put these kind of things, and this is the kind of scenario you're envisaging. Let's say 4 or 5 scenarios. Then this is what you're doing. So it's more about, say at the end of the day, this is about a communication to the stakeholders. So you're saying, okay, this is when if climate change happens, this is the risk that the so no, sorry, I think we talked about okay, this CFT is different. Yeah. So so it's about communicating how the climate risks will affect your company's operations. So it's like a risk, climate risk, how it's going to affect the company, right? So it's going to so as long as you have a very convincing and a logical approach to creating these scenarios, I think it should be fine.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Maybe I can call Mr. Sanjeev.
Hi, Professor. Hi, everyone. This is Sanjay. I'm from Spira Solutions. So I have question related to TCFT.
Yeah.
Is it related to only finance sector or is it related to all the sectors? So I have that question. So we talk more about the finance related one in the TCFT. So it is related to only finance sector?
No, it is related to every sector. So it is common for that. So it is. So if you look at TCFD, it is very simple in one way, conceptually. So every company has a lot of risks. So it is kind of a risk measurement and mitigation framework. So every company, there is an enterprise risk management team, so who identify all the risks that will have an impact on the financial performance of any company. So far, climate risk was not seen as something that is need to be incorporated into the risk management. So that is where TCFD came, and they said that after the Paris Climate Agreement in 2015, they said that okay, climate risk, everyone says that it's a risk. So if it is a risk, then you need to be able to incorporate that into your decision-making process. So that is where the TCFD comes from, and it is not specific to. So there are you can apply TCFD to any sector you want, but the outcome will be very different. Because, like I said in my earlier answer, so the material issues will be different for different sectors. So what might be very material for let us say a manufacturing company may not matter to a financial services company, right? So the carbon footprint of let us say a mining company will be very different from an IT company. So that is where the material factors come into the picture. But you use TCFD; it's a framework which can be used for any sector.
Okay. So it's not related to finance sector, right?
No.
Okay. Thanks.
Sir, good morning. Good morning, everyone. This is Gautam.
Yeah.
Got two questions, sir. The first question is that in case of social or economical impact assessment, it usually takes a longer period, maybe 5 years or 6 years, to come to a decision. So while reporting onto ESG under these two pillars, so how we can exactly measure what's the advancement within 1 year, because we are reporting for 1 year only. So how it's a bit challenging. It's quite a challenging kind of thing. So how other people are doing in the industry? That's the first question.
Okay, so I'll answer this, and then you can go to the second question. So the thing is, so this is a fairly new area. So the first part you have to do is to set a baseline. So you need to have some kind of metrics for the status quo where we are today, right? The benchmark part. So if you're reporting ESG for the first time, you need to start with some kind of a benchmark, and then you compare at the end of the 12-month period. You compare the performance for that particular year compared to the benchmark, at least for the first year. and then you measure the improvement or whatever it is. What is the change during the 1 year? So right now, a lot of these KPIs are very people are still working on quantifying them. So some of the metrics are easy. Let's say environmental. Okay, it's not. You can come up with a fairly good estimate of your emission factor, your emissions. That your energy consumption is very easy. So you can take your electricity bill and see how much your electricity bill has gone up or gone down, and of course then you divide it by your production, whatever it is. So you have to come up with a specific emission intensity. So some of these metrics are easy, but some of them are not that easy. So on the social side, things like what is the percentage of female employees, gender thing, or that could be metrics. Okay, what is the number of accidents if it's a manufacturing firm? Let's say what is the number of accidents on the shop floor in a year? So these are things which you may already have data, but there are some things for which you need to start putting in some kind of a data capture mechanism. The data might be there with someone or the other, but it just has to be taken into the right form and put it into a structured way. So it's challenging in the first few years, but and I think everyone gives the leeway, right? So even if you're reporting in the BRSR, the investors also, everyone understands that. So, but over a 1 or 2 year period, you mature your data structures or the data capture mechanisms will mature over a period of time. So, I hope that answers.
So, do you think this baseline should be dynamic to avoid repetition?
No. So baseline is you are doing it only once. So if you're doing this year, so that will remain the baseline for the rest of the thing. And when you go to the second year, your first year metrics will become the kind of the reference point. The baseline will be static. It is going to be the first time you are doing it only once.
Right, sir. Thank you. And the second question is that while we are talking about TCFD recommendations here, why you are not taking IFRS into consideration?
See, IFRS is a different. So the TCFD is a standalone thing. Now it has become part of IFRS. Right?
Yes,
so
sir.
IFRS is something different. In the sense, it's
Yes.
The accounting standards. Now, so this has come into the fold of TCFD. But TCFD framework is still on a standalone basis, right? So IFRS has taken those and incorporated into the new reporting guidelines, sustainability reporting guidelines. But there is no particular reason because finally now it is also part of IFRS.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I think I'll give preference to people who have been raising their hands. So I'll go with Mr. Vignesh.
Yeah, very good morning, Professor. This is Vignesh. So in one of the lectures you mentioned, I hope I'm audible.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah. So in one of the lectures you mentioned companies can define a 2 degree Celsius scenario. So my question is, how a company can relate themselves to this measure of 2 degree Celsius, or how do they know what degree Celsius of impact they have, their service or their product has in the environment?
Yeah. So this is fairly relatively easy for companies, very big companies who have been doing it for a long time. So if you take companies like Shell or oil companies, so they have been doing this. If you go to, I would highly recommend all of you to go through the TCFD reporting of someone like Shell, right? So they've been or British Petroleum (BP). So these are the people who have been doing this for a fairly long time. So for them it's easy, but for smaller companies or companies who are not familiar with this, to start doing it, first there has to be a capacity building in terms of understanding what is this 2 degrees C, right? So 2 degrees C comes from the Paris Climate Agreement, and how it is relevant to the corporate is you have to look at how the emissions, at what percentage. So every company has emissions, CO2, greenhouse gas emissions. So what percentage of it, or at what threshold is it 2 degree, and what threshold it is for 1.5 degree, and what threshold is 4 degrees, and all those different thresholds. So if your emission intensity is set below a certain limit, again that depends upon your company size, it depends upon a couple of other factors, your energy mix and all those kind of stuff. So that's something only each company has to evaluate and come up with an estimate. So they have to look at at this particular emission intensity, I am within this 2 degree, right? So the way I look at it is, I as a company, if I'm a company, then my emissions is not leading to is below the 2 degree threshold, which means that I am emitting less than what is permitted. So that is how we have to do it. It does get into too much of technicality. I mean, right now, I don't think we have that kind of time here. But the point is, it's again, it's a good question. That's very challenging because every company needs to have a fundamental idea about the 2 degree, the different thresholds, and how their thresholds, how much their emission correlates to or maps to the 2 degree or 1.5 degree or 4 degree scenarios.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
So I think SS89.
Yeah. Good morning, Mr. Madhavan.
Good morning.
My name is Sriram. My question is regarding carbon tax, which you have spoken in one of your lectures, wherein you said European Union is proposing to have carbon tax. And how will this impact our Indian exporters to Europe?
So this goes back to one of the earlier questions on CBAM, right? The Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism. So every exporter to the European Union, so they have to report their emissions, and they have kept some thresholds for that. So it's a related thing, not exactly the same thing. So carbon tax is the one thing is when it's a tax at the end of the day. So if your emission is above a certain limit, then obviously it will increase the cost. So if as an exporter, it means that your products, if the emission is very high, your products can become more expensive. So let's say steel company. So that is where the green hydrogen and everything is coming in. If you're going with the old way of doing things, where using the emissions are very high for steel production, obviously it will attract a lot of tax, and so it's like a cross. So it's not a cross-border tax. So the carbon tax that we talked about, that I mentioned in my presentation, I think it was from that the case study, right? In one of the company that I had given. It was from their perspective. So it was like I think that's a UK-based company, and they talked about how carbon tax, how that will affect their bottom line, because that will increase their cost, and how they are going to manage that. So so it is not applicable to. So let's say if a carbon tax is imposed in Europe, that obviously doesn't apply to India. But then that so what Europe is doing is they are not looking at this issue purely from a European perspective. So they are also looking at it from a value chain perspective. So the idea is the European companies can outsource all the dirty work to China or India, where they keep emitting, and they can claim to be very carbon neutral or something, right? That's the easy part. So in order to avoid that, what they're doing, that's where they are saying that, okay, even if it is produced from outside of European Union, then they have to, if the emission intensity is very high, then obviously that has to be penalized. I mean, then there has to be a level playing field, or it has to meet the requirement, carbon emission threshold requirement. So that's where the CBAM comes in. So carbon tax is for the within companies which are operating within Europe, and CBAM is mainly for companies who are exporting to Europe.
Okay, got it. One more thing I wanted to discuss, or if you can throw some light on the carbon credits. How is it? What is it, and how it is traded? If that is also part of our course.
Okay, so I didn't cover that. I think that was covered by Professor Sahu. So I would rather refrain. I would let them talk about it. But having said that, just to give a brief idea, the carbon credits is that if so every company can have so every company will be emitting emissions. Will be doing CO2 emissions. But if they are doing something to reduce the emissions by other measures, mitigation measures, or let us say they are doing some reforestation, they are buying land and planting trees, for example, then that is a way of reducing carbon emission. So those kind of activities, they can get carbon credits, which they can sell to someone else who needs to buy it. So for a credits to work, there has to be a some kind of regulation which gives clear targets to companies. So any company which is emitting less than their target, then they get credits, which means that they're doing a good job. So which means that they have invested money and they are able to reduce it below what they are allowed to. Whereas a lot of other companies might be emitting more than what they are allowed to. So the companies which are emitting more than what they're allowed to, they can buy the credits from the companies who are emitting less than what they're allowed to. So that way, the money flows from if a polluting company who are above their threshold, then they can offset it by. So they have to pay, obviously the carbon credits are expensive, or there is a cost for that. So the money goes to the companies who are doing a good job. So it's like kind of a way to uh, so mitigate the effect of the emissions. So someone doing a good job will get paid, whereas the one who is not um, meeting the
Got
threshold,
it.
they have to buy it out.
Thanks. Yeah, got it. Thanks, Mr. Madhavan. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Dr. Pradeep.
Good morning, sir. I am Dr. Pradeep from Trivandrum. I would like to know whether any agriculture processing company in the list of 1,000 companies mandated to file BRs are imposed by SEBI. And because of what I am asking is because agriculture processing companies are entirely different from other companies in terms of energy consumption and then value chain analysis, etc. Is that the framework is common to agricultural processing companies and other companies, both in India and in abroad?
Okay, so one of the things again, when it comes to the European regulations, I'll start with that because that's where everyone is looking at. Uh, so right now, these the standards, reporting standards, are all sector agnostic, which means they are the same for irrespective of what the industry of the company is. But there is also this recognition that each industry has its own peculiarities, and each you cannot compare the emissions of, let's say, a mining company, as I said, the previous example, a mining company's emission with the emissions of an IT company. They are very different, fundamentally very different, because the nature of operations is different. And the same applies to agriculture companies. So the emission pattern, the intensity, and everything will be different. So going forward, even in BRSR right now, it's only I think it's a sector agnostic standard. But I'm sure that the sector specific reporting will come soon, very soon. And it's already if you there is this predecessor called SASB. I mean that's mainly in US. So they have already have the sector specific reporting guidelines, and that is that will happen very soon. I mean, very soon when I say maybe over the next 2 to 3 years, but right now it's agnostic. And the other question is, I am not aware. So your question about whether there's an agricultural company in the top 1,000, so you can actually go online and check. You can take a list of all the top 1,000 companies by market cap, and I'm sure there will be a lot of companies. A lot of these 4,000 companies will also be food processing companies are anyway part of the agriculture value chain, and I'm sure there are many of them in the top 5.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. So I think SS 105.
Yeah, good afternoon, Professor. This is Sri Kumar Shivdas here. I work for a company called Johnson Controls. Professor, you were saying that, in one of the questions you were answering, like, when we were looking at the baseline calculations and all those things, one thing, what becomes a bit difficult for us is baseline. When we are calculating baseline, there will be a lot of interactive effects which we normally, work around. So there is a possibility, like once we have fixed the baseline, there is a possibility, like after 1 year, probably during that period itself, the baseline can change a lot. So uh, uh, the uh, the thing is, I would like to hear from you how we can create an efficient and clear M&V procedures incorporating these kind of effects as well. Basically, if we have to revisit the baseline, then probably we will have to speak to the end users on how their baseline is going to differ because of so and so reasons. All these things, how do we stipulate? How do we make it a standardized procedure for them to consider it. Basically, when we go and declare a baseline, they stick to it forever. Like, they will not look into any other aspect, whether there is a change going to happen because of a difference in operations, difference in occupancy levels. All these things can cause the uh, changes in baseline, right? So how do we incorporate that into a strong M&V plan? That is one thing which I would like to hear from you.
Okay, I think just to clarify, so the baseline that you're talking about, I think the context is quite different. I think gentleman earlier asked about the baseline. So that baseline was for the reporting, right? So the ESG reporting typically, like the BRSR reporting and everything, so they are done on an annual basis. So I think the earlier question was about when there is because you're reporting every 12 months. So where do we start and do we have to change the baseline? So I think your question is, I think, relates more to some kind of a ESCO model kind of a thing. Am I right? You're talking about you're offering some
You are
energy
right.
efficiency.
It is also related to, but it is exactly related to energy reporting. Basically, when we do,
Yeah. So correct, ESCO model, right? You must be doing some ESCO models.
Correct.
So these two are different things. Of course, the baseline is the common word, but in case of, so I have done three, four ESCO projects myself. So what you raised is a very important point, because especially the first ESCO that I did was in 2017, right? So when that was early days. So like you said, we start with the baseline energy consumption data, but at the time we never realized that your energy savings will depend not only on the kind of energy efficiency equipment that you're putting in, but it also depends on the utilization part. I think that's your
exactly
question.
correct.
So let's say if you're a manufacturing firm, you may have cyclicality in terms of your utilization. So that will affect your energy savings, because you must have planned for a certain assumptions, right? You must have did a baselining and you would have said that, okay, it's going to be static for the rest of the contract, maybe 5-year contract or something. But 2 years later, you will realize that the production capacity has reduced. So which means that your savings has also reduced, obviously, in absolute values. So that will obviously lead to a scenario where you have to go back and negotiate the contract, which might turn out to be, if it is on the if actually the production capacity or utilization is increased, then then you benefit. But if it is not that way, then you're at a loss. But we kind of we took a World Bank contract and we worked on that. So there is a very clear floor and the ceiling. So wherein you say that irrespective of what happens, if the savings fall below a certain number, you still have to pay, right? So that's a pay use or pay kind of a model, where you say that, okay, uh, if my emission, because your financial modeling and your the amount of money you invest in depends upon your IRR, depends upon a certain minimum revenue, so it cannot go below that. So the only way to answer that is you have to put in this floor and the ceiling. Floor you definitely have to put, because you have to protect your investment. Ceiling is up to you. I mean, ideally I wouldn't put it, but the other party would want to put a ceiling. So I think that's more of a contractual thing.
Understood.
Does it answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
To large extent, yes.
Niranjana.
Good morning, sir. I have few questions from the phone house, few basic questions. So please kindly clarify. So talking about the GST reporting is where they are talking about environmental social governance. And there are a lot of criteria. It talks not only in your module, but in the subsequent modules as well. There are a number of criteria which we have given. Example, BRSR has some 9 categories based on which it has to be reported. But how do we actually measure them? Is there any documents where we can defer and measure, especially the social and governance factors? How do we measure? I think one of them, they asked a question related to reputation, but is there any exact formula? And currently, how are they reporting all these? How are companies reporting them? So I wanted to understand that clearly. That is the first question.
Yeah. Okay. So when it comes to reporting, there are two types of information that you can share. So one is a qualitative information, and one is a quantitative. So when it comes to quantitative reporting information, that is something you can measure and give numbers. You can put KPIs, You can use some metrics, let's say energy emission intensity or carbon intensity or absolute numbers. It can be relative numbers or absolute numbers, right? So as I said earlier, when it comes to the environmental part, most of the things can be measured. It's likely to be either energy consumption, emission can be measured, or not, you cannot measure emission, but you can estimate measures based on some emission factors. Then you have water usage, which you can measure, and so on and so forth. You can measure what percentage of your waste is getting recycled, and your circular economy part. So these kind of things you can actually measure. It is very likely that information is there with someone or the other. It may not be in one place. So let us say one department, your utilities department might have the energy and water information, whereas your, let us say, I don't know, logistics team or supply chain team might have the recycling part, whatever it is. So it depends upon company to company who is handling it. So when it comes to social issues, there also some of the data can be easily measured. You might already have the data because it is also mandated. Because I think the number of accidents data and all, you have to report to the labor department, I think. So there are a lot of metrics that you anyway have to report to different departments, pollution control to labor department, many of these statutory bodies. So these are the quantitative metrics, quantitative data. The qualitative data, some of them are not easy to measure. So like the reputation discussion we had. So the question is, if you have to first look at what framework you're reporting. So BRSR, if you're within the top 1,000. But if you still want to report, you can go GRI reporting, which many companies already do, and I'm sure some of your companies will already be doing GRI reporting. So the question first is to see what are the metrics that you want to report, because GRI is more of a voluntary ESG reporting framework. Right? It is not even an ESG per se. I mean, I don't want to get into the detail, but there is this two perspective. One is ESG is more from a risk perspective. GRI is kind of more from an impact perspective. So you need to look at the double materiality. So one is the inside out and outside in kind of a thing. So one is, which means that the traditional way of looking at it is how do these external factors affect my company, right? So the outside to in. But now we are also looking at the impact, how my company's operations are affecting my surroundings or my stakeholders. So keeping that aside, coming back to the reporting thing. So the question is, what are the metrics that you have? What are the metrics you want to report? And if you want to report on those metrics, what data you have? So in many cases, if you don't have the data, then there is no way to get the data. Then obviously you can give a disclosure saying that, okay, this might be material, but right now we are not able to report for whatever reason. Whether that is acceptable to the stakeholders it depends upon your communication strategy.
Okay. So like how environmental, mostly we have the GHG protocol. So I just wanted to understand there is any similar things where we can refer for social as a governance. We also have the ISO standards. So I just wanted to ask on those lines.
No, I think BRSR is fairly detailed. So I think that could be a good starting point. So you can go through the BRSR document because SEBI has given it very clearly. So there they have given what are the data points you need to report and what are the metrics for each of the data points. So I think that could be a start.
One of the courses there was something like ESG major index providers, Thomson Reuters, MSCI. So they are also providing some key metrics and submetrics. So I just want to understand this connection with ESG, and are these the organizations who also assign the ESG rating?
Yeah, so there are a lot of ESG ratings providers. So actually, I can do one thing. I can share if you're talking about the ESG ratings. If you're interested, if any of you are interested, I can share a very detailed ratings thing. It's something I wrote about a year back. My PhD work is also something to do with this. You can go through that. So I think you also put something in the chat box. Yeah. Yes. So ESG ratings is something different. So reporting is different, and ratings are different. So the ratings are provided by a certain agencies, rating agencies. So they basically they go
Hello, sir. Sorry, I think we lost you. Were you able to hear us? Hello, sir. Are you able to hear us?
I think got
Connectivity issue, I think, yeah.
Yeah, now it's back. Yeah.
Sorry, I think, are you able to hear? Hello? I think
Yeah,
I
now we
lost
are
my
able to hear
connection.
you, sir. Yes.
Okay, yeah, I think I'm sorry. I think I lost connection. Got correct. Yeah, so what I was saying was that is something different. So that is done by rating agencies, and there are many rating agencies, as you will see in that article that I shared. And I have given the example of 4 or 5 of them, and each one has a very different rating. So it depends on who is giving the rating and methodology of the ratings provider. So different people give different weightages to different issues. So yeah, but again, that's something external to a company's the internal reporting. But obviously, whatever you report, if you want a, in fact, we've been discussing with a few companies who want to increase their ESG rating, improve their ESG ratings. So in order to improve the ESG ratings, you need to decide which rating you want to improve, because each one has a methodology, and they also tell which of the metrics they give high weightage to. So which means that if you want to increase the ratings of that particular provider, you have to improve the performance along a particular metric which they are using. So so that's something that can be done separately, or that's something outside the scope of the reporting part. But yes, so you can read the reference I shared. You can get a lot more information on that.
Sure, sir. And about these green bonds, how are they helpful, sir? Green bonds?
So green bonds are more of a financing instrument. So which means that they're a debt instrument. So you can go to the market and raise money either using equity or debt. So this is a debt instrument. So here green bonds are the ones which are used, or which you can use to raise money at favorable terms. So green bond, but you have to meet a lot of criteria. So these green bonds, if you have to get money using green bonds, then you have to meet some emissions requirement, and you have to do a lot of documentation to show that the money that you're raising. So let us say you want to install a new energy efficient equipment in your factory. So and you want to let's say it's costing like 10 crore. So you can either go to a regular banker and get some money at a normal whatever prevalent market rates, or you can raise some issue. So without getting too much of the technical part, you can probably finance it using a green bond at a much favorable rate. So let's say if you're able to raise, if your interest rate is 10%, with a normal loan or a normal bond, with a green bond you might get it at 8%. But then it comes with certain conditions in terms of how you are going to use it, in terms of reporting on an annual basis as to how the investment, the money that you raised, how is it leading to reduction in your emission intensity.
Thanks a lot for answering the questions.
Okay, so I think Professor Sahu is here. Hello, Professor Sahu.
Yeah, good morning, sir.
Good morning. Okay. Yeah. So I think I'll then hand it over to Professor Sahu. So Professor Sahu, I've been I've been answering questions related to my part, mainly on ESG and TCFD and climate risk scenarios. So that part, I think. Are there any further questions for me before I hand it over to Professor Sahu?
So there was one question I had asked in the chat box.
Okay.
Can you throw some more light on the applying scenario of the two things which you mentioned in terms of IE and IPCC?
Yeah, so those are climate scenarios. So the IEA is International Energy Agency, and IPCC Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change. So they are the ones leading modelers, if you will. So they have been using climate data to model different scenarios, climate change scenarios. The question. So you already have a data set. So if you want to do TCF climate scenarios, you can start with those data sets. So that's what I was referring to. So whether it is useful for you depends upon the kind of resolution you're looking at, whether it applies to the kind of geography that you are in, and other factors, and how much you can customize it to your particular scenario.
Understood. Thank you. Thank you.
I hope that's. So I'll take it as a last question because I think Professor Sahu also has to answer a lot of questions, I think. So with that, thank you very much. So I think I'll be around for some more time, but you can, if you have more questions, I think you can send it to NPTEL team and they will forward to me, and I will try to answer it to the best of my knowledge. So thank you. So thank you very much. Professor Sahu, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, good morning. I am Santosh. I have taken module 2 related to the policy changes. I'm an economist, so you may please have your questions either in terms of you can raise your hand. That is one way that we can look at the questions, or you can also type in the chat box, which will be easy for me to look at and then get into the details. Hello, I'm audible?
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Sir.
Yeah. Any doubt, questions, or anything that you want to discuss, or you have you looked at the, videos?
Sir, I have a question.
Yes, please.
This is Rama here. As such, when I look into the overall, assessment and the ratings, etc., regarding the social part of it, quite a number of the ones are, though seem to be quantitative, become relevant to the company with vis-a-vis to the society. It becomes subjective. A rating when given by one set of company may not be applicable to another set of companies.
Okay.
How do we rationalize this? Like, how do we get it to a common bottom line?
No, rating in the sense, what kind of rating you are referring to?
We are working out, the ratings. Some points are given, and the indicators are provided.
Okay.
When you work on that, if it is not common, how do we get it to a common denominator like?
Okay, a common denominator which will be used for social policy, is it? Mr. Ramchandra, a common index required for a social policy. That is what you meant to say.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't know whether I got the question 100% correct, but let me start. And in between, you can please tell me if I am going somewhere. See, ideally, if you look at the policy scenarios, they are classified into the sector-based policies, right? First is, let's say, the primary sector policy, which are largely agriculture-based when the economy was in the agriculture dependency. They needed support from the government. Second one is the industry-based policy, because industries have to be competitive. An example of industry policy can be your competition policy of India that comes to make industry competitive, because industries would not be monopoly. That is the basic idea of a welfare state. That means if industry will be monopoly, they'll charge higher price. If they're charging higher price, the consumer is to pay more. If the consumer is to pay more, then they're basically in a troublesome situation. So to reduce the price in the market and create competition, Competition Commission of India is there. Then you have what generally we call it a social policy, but they are basically socio-economic policy, which means economic policies which would increase the social fabric in terms of making labor force competitive in the market in terms of either primary source of engagement or secondary source of engagement. That means education, health, sanitation, creating basic entry-level employment conditions are the socio-economic policy. Now, these are the standard policy that we have from 1947, 50s, in fact, 1950s, in terms of when Indian economic development happened. And challenges are different from 1950 to 2024, because in the beginning, when we had the independence, we had the problem of food policy, because we didn't have food, we were importing food grains. So basically the idea is how to make ourselves sustainable from import of food grains. Can we produce inland? That was the challenge. So Green Revolution was created. Followed by White Revolution was created, because milk was not available, quality of milk was not available. So there was a White Revolution was done. Interestingly, White Revolution goes hand in hand with the agricultural policy in terms of Green Revolution, because agriculture and allied activity. So your livestock comes under the allied activity segment. So it's basically expansion of the Green Revolution horizontally. You just increase the space of the Green Revolution and created something called a White Revolution. So similarly, there are a lot of policies came to strengthen the economy from over-dependency of import burden by the Indian economy. Now, in a parallel setup, the government also look at developing industries which are heavy manufacturing industry in the beginning. If you look at all the steel plants, all the thermal plants were created long back, because government at that point in time thought that unless we have a very strong manufacturing base of heavy manufacturing industries, because we have raw materials available with us, largely in terms of iron ore and etc. And hence we must utilize this iron ore to produce something. So then your manufacturing policy started coming in, then competition in manufacturing started coming into picture. Followed by the 1990 story, all of us know that the balance of payment deficit happened in India, which is an external factor. This external factor means we are still importing more than we are exporting. We had a problem of not having good amount of dollars with us. So we couldn't trade. Now, in absence of dollars, what we did, we basically gave the gold reserve that we had at that point in time from the World Bank. We agreed on expanding our economy by creating liberalization, privatization, and globalization. That is the 1991 story. That brought service sector into India in terms of a competitive sector. But nonetheless, in this entire period of policy change, what has happened is we never looked in terms of a clear-cut focus on externalities being created. We had sustainable policies. For instance, any policy that are linked with air, that is linked with water, that is linked with any kind of afforestation program, for instance, they were there from 1950s onwards, but we never thought about the part of externality that comes into picture. Now, interestingly, externality used to never come from the primary sector, that is, the agriculture sector, because agriculture sector was fertilizer, pesticides independent till a point of time, so that the runoff water, which was causing pollution, was not there. So that sector was less pollutive. But when the demand went up, and that sector also become competitive in terms of producing more to catering more food grain to all of us, then it also started using pesticides and fertilizers, and it also started extending to negative externality. So what is a negative externality? It's something which basically creates a product that is non-useful in the current state of science and technology understanding. So therefore, what happens when the product is not useful in terms of a marketable value, that becomes a negative externality. Then the Indian economy started producing negative externality from agriculture, from manufacturing. Today, if you look at from services. So therefore, a sustainable economic policy is more important, because now we are facing a trouble that if we are producing X amount of goods and services for consumption, we are also producing X2 amount of goods and services which are not going to be consumed. Now, the question therefore is, a firm or an industry will basically survive for profit maximization. Hence, they don't care about the negative externality that comes into the atmosphere or the ecosystem. There is no price mechanism to address that problem. Therefore, there has to be certain standards and certain regulations and certain indices to come. Now, the role of industries, therefore, is not only to utilize the natural resources to produce a goods and services which is going to be consumed at a market price, but also to safeguard the environment and the local livelihood which they are surrounded by. So many examples are there. For instance, all of us know about the CSR funding and stuff like that, which basically the company is giving back to the society other than creating employment. So number one, the company is creating employment. Doesn't matter whether the local employment creation or global employment creation or migrant population working. Employment is being created. Now, once employment being created, the job should not be end there for the company, because the company has also the responsibility to return back the negative externality created by them. Largely, it happens for firms in the polluting segments. For example, when you talk about fertilizers, fertilizer is important for the agriculture sector, but at the same time, fertilizer is created from the, let's say, chemical industries, and chemical industries, while producing fertilizers, are pollutive. So there are elements which are pollutive while getting produced and while in use. So that becomes a subjective judgment. Now the question is, whom are you going to tax? Are you going to tax the agriculture sector, or you are going to regulate the industry sector? Now in industry sector, that is organized, competitive, there are standards where industry sector can save the economy. But at the same time, if you look at the agriculture sector, that is unorganized, marginal farmers are there, land is not divided between people equally, or competition in agriculture is yet to come, and modernization in agriculture yet to come in many of the states. So entering into agriculture seems to be a difficult job than thinking about the production part of the fertilizer and controlling the externalities, because the idea is, at the end of the day, India should reduce the externality so that it matches the goal of 2070, 2047. Then the problem comes for the industries, because the industries are heterogeneously distributed across country, and each state has its own legislation, has its own policies, has its own characteristics, which makes even more complex. So when you say common indices for one size fits to all, may not be applicable for industries, because these are location specific, resource dependent specific, and these are typically specific to the idea that how the value chain of production happens, and where they are dependent on multiple resources, and hence how the ratings or how the regulations or how the activities can be done. I'm not sure whether I have clearly understood your question and responded back, but anyway, this was the first question, and we started the discussion. So, Mr. Ramchandran, if it is okay, you can still continue so that I get the clarity.
Thank you very much for your detailed explanation to the basic of my questions. While you have, yes, you have answered a part of it and made me think towards channelizing my thoughts and going towards the correct answer. Thank you, Professor.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, thanks. Any other question, please? Yes. I can see the hand. It says only SS. Please go
Good
ahead.
morning.
Good
Good
morning.
morning. My name is Sriram.
Yes, Ram.
I have a question regarding the India's energy projection and ambitious target to achieve 50% of energy from renewables by 2030. Okay. So what I see in your chart that you had given is that India would be having around 256 out of 1900 as the energy consumption. So for 2030. So is it a realistic target or we are just giving some figures?
Okay. See, let me just go back a little bit so that it gives you the idea of why these figures have come up, where these figures have come up, and why government is projecting these numbers, or even why international agencies are projecting numbers which sometimes may not be feasible enough. All this started from, okay, so if you look at India, see the majority of the problem that India is facing right now is again shifting from food import to right now we have a energy import. Energy import has become one of the major problems. Now, in energy import, it is again not definitely the crude oil import, but it is also the coal import. I mean, it's not that we have an abundant amount of good quality coal which the domestic economy can serve. So we import coal depending on which of the coastal state we belong from, and depending on that, we are basically importing it. Now, we have increased our coal consumption because obviously the good part of the Indian growth story is we have developed and we are developing much faster. Even if the presence of COVID and other things, the numbers are quite increasing. Now, when we grow at a 8% or 7% growth rate, what happens is energy becomes a fundamental thing to use. And hence what happens, the projected growth of India remains 8 and above. And hence the amount of energy consumption also goes up higher. Because in absence of energy consumption, it is not possible to grow. Energy becomes a catalyst for economic growth. To add a bit of story to that, energy also becomes one of the important part to save the distributional aspect of the economy. Right. It creates employment, it allows you trade, it becomes a competitive part in the international market competition. It makes you ahead in terms of the forex also. If you look at the trade, for example, when India started investing in refinery industries, we started trading the derivatives and stuff like that. So there are a lot more. I mean, there is a bigger story on energy that goes there. But when you project, so your energy consumption projection is dependent on the growth story. So if India is going to grow up at 8%, then energy consumption will grow at least at 8%, but definitely more than 8%. So if a favorable economy has to be projected, then your energy consumption has to be also projected in that sense. That creates a market for energy. So and please remember that forecasting are not the true sense of data that we are talking about. When we forecast, we are not able to address the problem of risk and uncertainty. Right? Just to tell you, something not directly related to this question. Whoever has projected population growth in 1990 or 1995 never thought that COVID would come. So the risk and uncertainty part is not accounted for when we project it. So the projections are merely numbers that would allow countries to reshape their economic policy in such a way that they achieve nearest to that number.
Yeah, but in our case, we have projected 50% by renewables by 2030, and we might reach only 10% by renewable. So that is a big gap.
No,
between
absolutely.
10 and 50.
I understand. For instance, unless we see, okay. Now the other problem is our forecast is linked with the net zero by 2047. So when my target to become net zero is 2047, then I have to have another target in 2030. And obviously, I'm also agreeing with you that we may not reach that target.
Yes. Yes.
But unless a higher target is there, the market expansion will not happen. For instance, when we say that we are going to use 50% of renewable by 2030 against the non-renewables, that means we are creating a market for the industry to play in and around the idea of renewable of 50%.
Yes.
So as an investor, we sitting outside India or even we sitting inside India, I would think that India is supporting government policies so for at least 50% in the energy sector. So that allows me to invest.
Yeah.
See, otherwise what happens is a regressive policy. If we say that we are going to have projecting only 10%, then 10% market only we are opening up. Out of the 10%, some of them remains in the idea of subsidy oriented sectors, government sector, public sector entities. So then 50% of 10% becomes the market for the private player. So now what happens? 50% is given for the public market for the expansionary market for the private sector, where let us say even 10% goes or 15% goes for the public sector entity. 35% market remains for the private sector.
Yeah.
So that allows the private. So the best example today we can think about an EV, electric vehicle mobility and the adoption rate. If you look at today, the survey which was done initially was not in favor of EV in India. People were talking about who is going to use EV because our small battery doesn't work. Because the science of battery was not as effective today as it was earlier when that used to come using in the automobile sectors. Look at today's condition that when government allowed this expansionary policy of FAME, FAME 1 and FAME 2 as two important policies, the EV manufacturers are competitively coming in India and number of players have gone up. So if you take just a comparison, how many players were producing non-EV two-wheelers in India and how many producers today are producing EV in India, and take the age of these differences. With almost 50 years of Indian independence India of 50 to 60 years, 3 large players came into the market, 4 large players came into the market in the IC engine framework. But look at this policy of EV. It allowed and said that we are going to use 50%. Tamil Nadu is contributing 40%. Wind installation has gone up higher. So it gives a positive sentiment to the market to come forward, invest, and then become profitable. Because government policies need to be adaptive in nature so that the private players accept it to play around. So therefore, the target may be higher. Yes, everybody knows about it because even if with the energy mix that we have, that energy mix cannot allow us to create a 50% dependency on renewables. For example, we can, even if we say in our public, documentation that we will get away with older thermal power plant because they become inefficient, because they are lesser productive, they are more polluted. But the question remains that unless India becomes an economy where employability can be shifted and liquidity in employment can come. The meaning of liquidity in employment means if I am working in a coal power plant, can I work in some other sector when coal power plant shuts down? That is called liquidity in employment. We don't have that liquidity. So we promise that we are going to reduce the number of thermal power plant because they're inefficient, and hence we reach to the 50% goal by 2030, 2047. The meaning is we are not encouraging more number of thermal power plant to come and operate. Instead of that, we are giving that space to the renewable market.
Okay. Thank you.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think few hands were raised. Yeah, Rahul, Mr. Rahul.
Yeah, good morning, Professor Sahu. So
Yeah.
this question is more from an academics perspective. So, everybody says that sustainability is a profitable business. And then on the other side, because we talk to, we are talking to, colleagues from IIT, so technology is a big contributor to that particular initiative. So my question to you is, as an economist, can we develop some kind of frameworks where we say an organization is matured on the technology piece and employing sustainability practices? So if this is the framework, then it kinds of provides an empirical evidence that, if you are at this particular level, you are going to be profitable, and set some kind of examples.
Okay, so let us first talk about the first part of the question. Sustainability is a profitable business. Not as a person who understands technology sitting at IIT Madras, because we usually work between departments and between expertise. If I look from a angle of as a pure economist, the first question that comes to me today, in Indian context, I'm talking about.
Yeah, Indian, of course.
They see, because there is another way to look at it. For example, environmental pollution is a problem. For whom? For the people who are poor. Because they're going to suffer, they're going to have health impact, they're going to deteriorate their health conditions, and they'll be not able to participate in employment creation, and government will have to intervene. So environmental problem is the degree of issues related to environment problem is for the underdeveloped, low income countries. It is not a problem with high income countries, because the quality of product consumed at high income countries are way better than what is being consumed in the low income, medium income countries. That also allows and applies for all of us here sitting. The rich people have no problem in terms of resource availability. Poor people have a problem in resource availability. So that is where India comes in picture. With a large scale of population, we have the quality of products are highly heterogeneous, and therefore a better standardization is required in terms of making sustainable. But when we talk academically into the word sustainability, the question is sustainability for whom? Are you or am I talking about sustainability of the company? Am I talking about sustainable production? Or am I talking about sustainable consumption? So sustainability is not a singular one which only links to ecosystem. Sustainability can be sustainability of a company to operate or a firm to operate in a market in a long run. That can be one sustainability. That yes, whatever happens, I can operate in the Indian economy. Like, we have firms for 140 years. The oldest firm in India is around 140 years. So 140 years they are in the operation, they are sustainable firms. Second is the approach at which I produced goods and services are sustainable. That means there is no competition going to come in, there is no new player going to come in, I am going to have a monopoly in production system. So if you please think about it, then intellectual property are creating that kind of sense of 20 years of sustainability of your product. You file a IPR and nobody can produce for 20 years because the entire technology is with you. Third is sustainable consumption. That means, am I getting product which are sustainable in terms of not creating hazardous output? And when I say consumption, doesn't mean eating. It's basically, again, producing certain goods and services, consuming by human being, consuming by others. So the sustainability is not as singularly used framework. It depends on the objective of a particular agent. For example, all of us are talking, and probably you will be encouraging, or you have already heard about those classes on ESG rating. Right? Is it done? And ESG rating and framework for ESG rating, or it will be done. If it is not done, it is going to come. Now the ESG rating, or even when I entered, there was a question about green bond, right? ESG rating is not Please read the definition of ESG rating. It is not that the company is going to create a beautiful environment for the ecosystem for the earth. It is basically if there is going to be a hazard, whether the company can stand still. If there is going to be a natural disaster, can the company adopt a new technology and still start producing? If temperature would go up higher and labor force are not available, can the company become automated and still start producing? That is basically the idea of ESG rating that comes into picture, where the finance go to play an important role. Now, general sense, what we see, sustainable products are, I agree with your statement in a very different way, that sustainability makes profitability. For example, companies, the hardware manufacturing companies today in computer, IITS for instance. I will not name the company because it either sounds like I'm promoting or I'm giving as a bad example. So there are companies that are very well standardized companies in the hardware market of IITS, particularly computer segment, okay, manufacturing of computer segment. They come up with new keyboards which are wirelessly connected through Bluetooth technology, but they are created from used materials, recycled materials. Now, because it is created from recycled material, the cost is higher. So, if it is not created by recycled material, the cost is lower, whereas it is created by recycled material, therefore the cost is higher. Now, what is the reason for that? Because the company has invested in the circularity of the economy, the company has invested in circularity of the product, the company has brought out the material used for that particular keyboard, starting from the metal chips to ending to the plastic and the rubber and whatever is used, recycled it and created a new product which has increased the cost. So the recycled keyboard, which is wireless Bluetooth, is around 2,000 rupees. So I almost gave the company's name in a different way, if you can guess it, 2,000 rupees. And the similar product which does not use recycled product will be around 1,500 rupees. But to make a sustainable product, the industry or the firm has to intervene in technology and make technology in such a way that the technology would increase the price. You know, it is not the material that increases the price. It is the technology which increases the price. To give you an example, let's say you are you're in a trip and you're thirsty. You drink water from a tube well. That's a public tube well. Water is free. You go to a shop, buy a 20 rupees water in a with packaging, that is 20 rupees. But the moment technology comes in water, right, the chemical composition of water doesn't change. When they say charcoal water, some technology comes into picture, it suddenly becomes 200 rupees from 20 rupees. The chemical composition doesn't change, the activity that it will have doesn't change, you know. When technology or RO, I mean, when we clean the water, clean water is more costlier than dirty water. It is not because only that the material is cleaned, but it is also the technology went inside the water. So sustainable productions would be highly costlier, and therefore it has a technology embedded in that. And the cost and the profitability comes from the technology part. But when you said that, can we have a framework connecting technology and sustainability for the Indian case? It is segment specific, industry specific, because look at the energy industry today in India. Many energy industries are international industries in India. They are not Indian industries. So the competition for a domestic firm is very, very low. Now, look at any other segment. For example, I don't know the composition of this class, but if you look at even the computer manufacturing segment in India, many of them are not Indian firms. The reason being, as a growing economy, our per capita investment in R&D has been very low. our idea of employability has been different than idea of employability for the advanced countries. Number of people working to create R&D is pretty low per 1,000 population. These are the reasons why we do not have adequate technology with us, which are intellectually property agreed, and gives a space for us to aggressively work on it and create a framework for technology sustainability pathways. If we do that today, I wonder the European Union or the US will take the maximum advantage because these guys have the technology with them. In fact, it was created, if you remember, long back in 2012. There was a time when Government of India thought about something called clean development mechanism. So what is the role of that? The West is generating pollution, they are emitting, they cannot reduce emitting, but what they can do, they can transfer their emission through some technology transfer. Now, technology transfer happens, so they give you generation -1 technology to India, and we adopt because we have generation -3 here. So we are in an advanced position of getting a better technology. And in lieu of that, they can invest in India because Indian government didn't have a pollution control board, didn't have the strictness in terms of the environmental rules and regulations. They came and invested in India. So now the question is, that transfer of technology is basically one of the reasons why we have windmills all across Maharashtra. If anybody is from Maharashtra can understand this. This entire Ahmednagar district, the investment went on. The windmills were basically because of the technology transfer in the energy industries. Companies like MCX were trading at that point in time. This, carbon, not carbon trade, it was the technology transfer trade was done at that point in time. So unless we as an economy become technologically advanced, and unless we as an economy become competitive in terms of intellectual property right, having a framework would not benefit to the local players, to the domestic players in India. And creating a framework for firms which are sustainable, technological advance and profitable would largely go to the multinational firms, do not necessarily comes to the domestic firms. And if you look at India, it's a very a peculiar industrialization case. Around 45% of firms are still in the MSMEs. Now, large scale, see, and because all of you are representative of the industries, you definitely know better than me that today each of the firms depend on either local value chain, national value chain, or global value chain in producing something. Firms have become specialized today. They are not diversified. For example, if I am Arvind Mills, I produce textile. I don't invest in growing, the material required for textile or cotton. There is a small firm which is grabbing cotton. There is a small firm which is cleaning the cotton, which is making something, and then I get the fabric. My idea is basically to make a good which is competitive in the world market by getting inputs from the downstream. And this downstream is around 40%, which is MSMEs. So unless the downstream become, technologically competitive, if I make the upstream as competitive, then what happens is the downstream would suffer in terms of exiting from the market, will not be able to compete in the economy. But academically, if you ask, yes, it's a good idea to think over it, whether we can probably come up with indices that explain sustainability, profitability, and the technology parameters. But for that, again, the problem is we need to have a very good data on technology. Unfortunately, let me tell you, I have been working in the areas of energy, environmental economics pertaining to industrial organization from almost last 13 years. Technology data is so difficult to get. Now, at a unit level, you may be knowing because you are working, but at the place where I sit, look at the data, buy the data. For example, we have CMI Progress data, that is, Center for Monitoring Indian Economy or Government of India data of annual survey of industries and all kind of this data. The only variable I got is whether a firm does R&D or not and how much it spends in R&D. The related R&D questions I get is how much embodied technology it spends and how much disembodied technology it spends. These are the 4 things I get. Now, when I look in deep into the amount of investment or expenditure goes for R&D, may not be essentially for R&D. It may be the salaries given to the scientist, or it may be the salary given to the person who has a scientific team. So I do not know how much goes for capital account, how much goes for creating a lab space. I do not know how much money goes for investment in terms of machines and stuff for the R&D, unless I do a systematic primary survey where the industry has to agree. So if I look at from the Indian perspective, we have to work on making the data robust, identify data which are India-centric data, which depends on the Indian characteristics of industries, Indian characteristics of the employability, Indian characteristics of the investors. Because the West investors and Indian investors are again different. On a very lighter note, even if there is a flood on Diwali, people will invest because we have our mindset, Diwali, we have to invest. The poorest of the poor in India still buys, half a gram of gold on Dhanteras. So that is how the Indian economy cannot be compared with the idea of the standard indicators given in the West. Unless we develop that, even technology dependency, technology adoption, technology creation are different in India as compared to others. So unless we have a clarity in the data set that comes for the Indian industry for their benefit, that is where an integrated, sustainable planning, which is now the government of India, along with few of us, is going on, where we are trying to understand the idea of sustainability from the industry perspective, its replicability through technology so that your emission will come down. Hence, we will have a better ranking system. For example, these polluting industries are best ESG rating industries. And profitable industries are the best ESG rating industries. So we have to think, in a little bit decentralized South Asian perspective when we talk about sustainability, profitability, and technology.
Okay, just to quick one comment, one request. So, when we are talking in terms of BRSR now, will it give us more clarity that we have, than we have today? That's one. Because there we are looking at Indian as the company has to be registered in India. I should have some, top line, maybe some top 100 companies or something like that we can look at. And second thing is, as an individual, probably I would like to get associated with what you are talking about, if it's that possible, because I'm also doing some kind of a research in what you are trying to do as part of my PhD project, and would like to, if we can connect offline on this.
Okay, so are you enrolled in a PhD program?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, it is
not
possible.
at IITM. I'm basically part of University of Pune. So
okay, no, it doesn't matter wherever you are. So it is possible to engage, definitely. But it depends how much time you have and what kind of activity. Pune becomes a very interesting. I don't know what is your PhD topic. We may discuss later on, not in this call. But you must please look at whether the PhD topic allows you in the framework of that thesis to add these parameters. Otherwise, you can do it as an independent work, which will definitely enhance your academic thrust. But going back to BRSR, see, so we have been analyzing Professor Satya and me. I don't know if Professor Satya has taken any class as of now. He will take a class. So Professor Satya and me are looking at the BRSR data. Right. Now, the BRSR data is a very good initiative by Government of India, which has to grow up on a very long way because it's the beginning of the data generation. And trust me, the data are not encouraging right now. Because when we say energy consumption does not necessarily mean coal consumption or electricity consumption or natural gas consumption. There are majority farms in India which use water to create heat. And heat is a part of energy use in a particular setup. So water is being used, boilers are being used, chilling machines are being used, which also consumes water. So unless the progress in, I wish the BRSR has to spread faster to rest of the as a mandatory one, because unless that comes as a mandatory one, firms are not ready to report anything. And unfortunately, unless very few firms in India which are very, very competitive, many of these firms have never reported anything except profit statement. Loss and profit statement and the expenses that goes, that accounting only they have done it, but they have never done a sustainable report. Today, when sustainable report becomes a mandatory event, recently only this ESG reporting has started, and ESG reporting is going to become something very, very competitive for all the firms. So there are consultants sitting who are taking advantage of certifying the sustainability reports. So when every firm would start working on BRSR data, then they can easily write a sustainability report. Firms never think about it, because please remember that for a firm it is an external cost, an additional burden for the firm. It doesn't add up in their process design, it doesn't add up in their innovation, it doesn't add up in their product design, it doesn't add up in their production, it doesn't add up in their other parameters. So unless firm sees there is a profit benefit, they are going to document the data, maybe for BRSR, maybe for sustainability report, maybe for anything else. And unless we have the data ready with us, creating a framework would be difficult, because then we are only assuming, hypothesizing things, and under the hypothesis we are creating some kind of a linkage between sector to sector and stuff like that. So yes, BRSR is a good initiative, I agree, but again it has to go a long way. I think you have another question, Mr. Ramchandran. Please go ahead. Yeah, Mr. Rahul, we can talk whenever you want.
Thank you.
Just drop me an email.
Thank you. We'll connect separately. Yeah.
Yeah, you connect me separately. Yeah.
My query to you is, in your explanation when you are giving for Rahul, you had made a statement that the technology increases the value of the product, the cost of the product. Not the value, the cost of the product. Now, if that's going to be the case, how it will become more viable for the end user?
Okay, so I'll just redesign your question. So you are telling if technology is going to increase the cost, then how it is going to be accepted, or where, at which point we can reduce the cost so that the users can get the benefit.
Exactly.
Yeah. So see, unless that's the best case of China, if you look at, right? See, China has the technology and China has the price mechanism for everybody under the sun. Meaning they have differentiated product for differentiated consumer at differentiated budget constraint. So the example I gave in Rahul's question was largely to tell how technology can change the price mechanism. But mass production and heavy demand will always reduce the prices of the goods and commodity, because it goes by the standard theories of economics, the law of demand and law of supply. For example, if tomorrow many of us would demand higher amount of charcoal water, then the charcoal water prices will come down. So it is the consumption and the amount of production links to the per unit cost of prices. Or there is the other way is, if this price becomes one of the important consumption goods and services, then the government will intervene and the government will say that, okay, now you have to subsidize it and sell it as a lower cost.
That happens. A policy thrust.
Yeah, either it has to come from the policy or it has to come from the demand side. For example, see, paracetamol tablet cost us around 1 rupee today. I don't know, around 1 rupee, I guess so. Do you think the cost is only 1 rupees? It may not be. Right? So certain pharma products are cheaper, even if their cost may not be 1 rupee or whatever market price it is sold. The reason is government is incentivizing there by creating policy and regulations, which is called price floor and price ceiling in economics language. So then what happens? You have to, or even EV is the best example. Subsidies are giving, people are buying it right now. But in absence of technology, when production happens more and demand goes up, the prices comes down. The best example is, I mean, all of us are using pen drives, right? So please think about it. The Type A pen drive cost in 2004-5 was 1,000 rupees for 128 or 256 MB. The cost drastically came down when technology entered. 4 GB pen drive Type A become 50 to 100 rupees. And at today's context, when we all speak, nobody want to use 4 GB pen drive. Now, what the industry did? So the prices were coming down because technology was better, semiconductor technology was better, device technology was better, size was smaller. What did the industry do? They changed the port. They said from Type A, we will now produce Type C. And the new computer came with Type C. So your old pen drive doesn't work in a new computer. You change the port type to C and increase the price again. So today even 4 GB Type C pen drive costs higher than 4 GB Type A pen drive. Why it happened? Because the technology entered, large manufacturing happened, more production happened, prices fall down. Prices were keeping falling down at a larger rate. Then immediately what you have to do, you have to innovate something new, where you change the pen drive port from Type A to Type C, which allowed even the other element to sell in the market, like a connector or whatever we call it, between Type C, Type A for some time. And then what happened? You introduce something called Type C with a new technology, and again the prices went up high.
That's a great explanation. Thanks.
Yeah,
that's a good one.
Mr. Niranjana, I think Miss Niranjana.
Good morning, sir.
Yeah.
Thanks for explaining all the questions in detail. So, seriously, I actually have to start seeing all those modules. So, most of the revenue technology is there, but technology is number one energy intensive, also it is cost intensive. A lot of money investment is involved in that. It's also energy intensive. So, as you said, even when you research and use the product, in the case of the keyboard example you're saying, the overall cost is again increasing. But they are not, they are having a bad effect on the environment. So, shouldn't we take into account the bad effect it has on the environment or the society? It has to be converted into a financial factor, and that has to be added to the product by putting less efficiency. So,
Madam, I'm really sorry. I don't know if I'm not able to hear it, or is there a problem in the voice? Can you repeat, because there is a lot of echo coming? Maybe I'll also mute myself so that.
Okay, sir. Am I audible now? Is it fine now? Okay. So my question is, sir, while you were saying about plastic, so while handling that, they were talking about zero waste to landfill. Lot of technologies for that. Same way in the case of cement, lot of technologies are involved. But the thing is, it's going to displace, if you're going to install a new factory, it's going to displace people again. There will be some displacement. In the case of national hydrogen mission, there again, the source for that is going to be water. Water is already a constraint. But hydrogen is going to be produced only from water, only from that which is going to be produced. So, first of all, is it a good step to go towards national hydrogen mission as a project when water is already a constraint? That is one question. Second thing is, plastics is something which everyone is using because it's very minimal cost. The technology is already there in place, so they are able to produce a lot of plastic, and that's the reason why even the layman is using plastic to such a large scale. There are so many products still coming with plastic, but the environmental effect which it has, or the social effect which it has, if we can convert that into an economic factor and add that economic value while we are selling the product itself. So when we sell the product with much more cost, then automatically the people will start consuming less amount of plastic and they will go for products which are much more safer for the environment. So can any policy be introduced in that way, where we consider even these factors while we set the price for the product? So that is my question. I also have a question regarding this national hydrogen mission. We are getting that hydrogen is going to be produced from water, but water is already a constraint. The freshwater supply is very low. So is it a viable technology that we are approaching?
Yeah, I got the question. I mean, you have asked three pointers in your question. One on hydrogen, second on plastic, and third on the dependency of fresh water and stuff, right? Okay, so let's start with hydrogen mission and the viability of hydrogen mission in India. Yes, I understand that hydrogen has to come from water because that is the easiest source of breaking the atom. I mean, breaking the association of H2O. And it seems easy to break H2O compared to CO2. Interestingly, that is why CO2 is a problematic element. The bonding is so strong, breaking is difficult. Possible, but difficult with high cost. But breaking H2O is easier. Because H2O comes from water and India as an economy in a tropical region is facing a lot of difficulty on fresh water, not only fresh water, groundwater. Water table ground has also depleted because of over dependency on water from various fronts, like industries have started consuming. Industry is a major consumer actually. Households have started consuming and our population has grown and stuff like that. And the quality of water has also deteriorated because of multiple reasons. And part of the reason is also fertilizers and chemical used in the agriculture field, which run off and goes and meets in the, it also creates a problem of groundwater pollution. So there are a lot of issues for groundwater pollution. Therefore, the challenge for the policymakers in India is definitely look at how they can address the problem of water scarcity, water demand, quality of water, in large pockets, like the metros, for instance. And I'm not talking about the water industries, the water mafia, stuff like that, which is a parallel economy going on. Now, leaving that away, the hydrogen mission does not necessarily look at only using fresh water to create hydrogen. It looks from various fronts where they are also talking about green hydrogen production. So the idea here is, if it is possible to produce hydrogen from industries where there is already a water being used. So that means industries are using water for purpose A. Can we convert back that into creation of hydrogen? For example, fertilizer industries is one of the potential industries where hydrogen can be created. And definitely, water is not the only way where hydrogen can be created, because hydrogen can be created from some other sources as well, where they become the byproduct of a certain manufacturing industries, not necessarily comes from the water alone. So, if the policy had documented or aiming at creating hydrogen as an energy source or fuel cells as an energy source by using water, fresh water, definitely is not a good idea, because we are already having a problem of per capita availability of fresh water in India. But it doesn't stop there. It actually goes beyond. It looks in terms of the possible industries where we can have hydrogen from as a leakage. For example, in 7 steps are there for production system. In one of the steps, we can get hydrogen. And can we get that hydrogen from that particular industry? Mostly fertilizer industry is a quick example that comes to me right now. There are multiple such industries where hydrogen can be produced. So the idea is, can we produce hydrogen as a byproduct, not necessarily the main product? That's number one. Number two is, if economy starts producing hydrogen, for instance, it becomes safety, it becomes useful, it becomes one of the major contributors of renewable energy sources, then the advantage or benefit would be the forests that you save without importing might be used in desalination factories. You can come up with technology of taking the saline water, converting into possible drinking quality waters, which would not only help the consumption problem or the demand of water problem, but also it would help in investigating in greater detail in the ocean regions. For example, I must tell you here, the government of India has come up with something called Deep Ocean Mission. They are going to do a lot of research where IIT Madras is also one of the partners institutions in doing it with, along with the DST. We're looking at in which way we can utilize the, please think about it. We have been fighting only for land, and we have been fighting for land productivity. Maybe for a flat, maybe for an industry, maybe for a locality, maybe for agriculture, maybe for recreational purposes. We are fighting for land. And such a big sea line is there in India's east coast and west coast, we never utilize that. The only way of utilizing the east coast and west coast were only getting fish or aquaculture, which was, there was no technology involved in that also. The technology was in terms of making a good boat which can take you to the forest place and then get some fish or prawn or whatever it is available, bring it and sell it in the market. That also we did not do well because we are not the best exporters of those products. In fact, China, Japan are the best exporter of the product that comes from the sea. So the investigation on the sea has been restricted because of the dependency on the saline water, and to know how can we convert the saline water into a useful water potential. So therefore the challenge of any policy is we should not look at a policy as a standalone policy. Hydrogen policy cannot be looked as a standalone policy. It has multiple dimensions with other policies. So if all policy work together, then hydrogen mission will be a successful policy. But if some policy fails, for example, fertilizer industry will say that no, I'm not going to accept it. I'm not going to introduce technology on green hydrogen production. I don't care about it. Then the policy will be singularly on water being one of the components to be used, and hence hydrogen has to be produced. So look at any successful growth stories across world. I'm not talking India, across world. It is multilateral different sets of policy makes one policy successful. So in absence of a leakage in the economic system, economic development happens. In absence of a leakage, that leads to reduction in the efficiency parameters, and hence the impact seems to be low. So for example, look at employment policy in India. Why employment policy in India is never successful policy? Because there are leakages. Barrier to entry is there, how people are entering, what people are doing inside. There are a lot of leakages coming up. Tax burden, look at the income tax particularly. Government of India is happy that 5% people are paying tax. Or 10% people are paying tax. 100% people are employed, but 10% people are paying tax. They're not paying tax, they're declaring tax. Paying anyway, we are doing it if it is a organized sector. Why they are happy at 5 to 10%? Because there is a large scale leakages. So any policy, may it be poverty eradication policy, sustainability policy, or even recently when we are talking about BRSR policy, any policy that is being placed, unless that policy is surrounded with multiple other policies, and each of these policies will contribute for the growth of that policy. So we cannot create a hydrogen mission successfully unless we have good industrial policies, unless we have automobile industry ready to accept it as a challenge and create technology so that fuel cell can be used in vehicles. I have a simple question to all of you here. Do you think electric vehicle was available only after 2015 in rest of the world? Honda was producing it before in Japan. The entire East Asia was running with batteries. Why it never came to India? Because technology is not, the democratization of technology is not there. Technology is still suffering in terms of monopoly. Whoever innovates will enjoy the benefits. Trade doesn't happen. Similarly, hydrogen production also. Unless we think multiple ways of producing hydrogen, then what happens? Water becomes one of the major source of creating hydrogen, hence may become a problematic situation. Coming to the second, plastic technology, plastic utility and pricing. Certain activities are done by Indian government. For instance, single-use plastic ban was happened sometime before, if I remember. All of us know, because all of us go to the market, and earlier we used to be given X amount of plastic bags. Today we carry it or we buy it from the market, which are the paper bags. But similarly, the increase in the e-commerce industries in India, the dependency on packaging industry has gone up higher. For example, please think, all of you, you can make a small note every day for 7 days, at least you make it. Every day, how many how many bags you are consuming? In presence of an industry called e-commerce. And earlier, how many bags you are consuming? Then the consumer's point of view, look at it. Every time I return a product, I create one more waste. Now, when packaging industry has become strong in India because of the e-commerce industries, and we become habitual of not getting into the market because incentives are more when you buy it from the internet, right? You can use it, send, return it, reuse it, send it, do whatever you want to do in the e-commerce market. We don't want to get into the market force. The packaging industry in India is growing really big. Then the question is, can one develop some kind of a packaging which would be eco-friendly, sustainable packaging? Now, it can be done only through recycling. It can be done only through circular economy. It can be done only through a major investment on recycling industries, which is absent in India. So it is always easy to say that let's not use plastic. But please tell me, look around you, wherever you are sitting, you are surrounded with plastic. Today, even the glass I am wearing is a plastic one. It used to be a glass sometime before. Some kind of a good quality plastic. So I can't leave plastic. Now, what is the nearest alternative for the plastic? The answer is today people are working on it. We do not know what's going to come in. What we can basically do, how to recycle, create probably regulation and restrictions on the use and reuse of these goods and services. Technology need to replace it, but we need a bigger market for recycling industries. And I was giving one more example, right? So if we do that, then the recycling packaging would cost more than the non-recycled plastic. And it has a bigger market value. Trust me, the world generates a huge amount of waste. China is the only economy which is ready to handle those waste. The day when China told, I'm not going to handle it, people were actually in a different situation because they don't know what to do with this waste. Therefore, in India, even today, the recycling industry becomes important because our utility-driven consumer in India, right? Because we have moved from a traditional utility behavioral approach. I mean, as in behavioral economics, if I think of as a behavioral approach, we have moved into a market-based instrument of a westernization of utility maximizers. If you please think about your or my even grandparents, they used to go with the bag to the market, come back with the bag to the market. We don't do it because we don't want to take anything. It looks like, who is going to take an additional bag with me? So that behavioral change has happened, and this behavioral change will remain. It will not just go by some advertisement or some kind of a regulation or single-use plastic bag, because I say, okay, I don't mind paying 20 rupees additional for the plastic bag. So what is required to know is, can we create technology which will do waste management and recycling activities so that even if we use plastic, we are not creating new plastic, but we are still dependent on the older set of material being used. Now, in a parallel way, there is a question on how China is doing it, because Chinese economy has also invested in Laos, Vietnam, nearest areas, Cambodia, and these pockets where they have expanded their business. They have created recycling industry. They know the technology of recycling. Because they know the technology of recycling, they can get the output from the recycling industries. We do not have such kind of initiative in India. See what we have. We never had a policy on recycling earlier. We used to dump it. Our technology is the externality comes from the recycling part, dump it. Even you look at the ferromanganese factories, if anybody has visited, the white ash that comes from ferromanganese factories were used to fill the landfill. It was used as a landfill. Now, when it is used as a landfill, it reduces the fertility of the land. It creates a different kind of a land structure that becomes another problem because we never engineered on what can be the possible implications of waste that is generated by the ferromanganese companies. So unless we understand the complete circularity of a product, so therefore the role of chemical engineering seems to be pretty high and material science engineering students seem to be pretty high. And we can't blame it because we all love to become computer science engineers, right? So then what happens, the problem of not understanding the recycling industry is going to be difficult. There is another question just popped up. I'll just look at it in call. Not aware of such recycling infrastructure developed China for recycling and it's leading. Yeah, no, because please look at the WTO, look at the WTO disputes that has come, which is called anti-dumping and dumping disputes. Now, in these dumping and anti-dumping disputes, there are documentation of how China handles it. Of course, China also pollutes its economy by handling it, but Chinese economy takes large scale of the waste that is generated, which they are able to recycle it. Niranjana is done. Okay. So, any other questions? Quickly, because we are done with the time. I think we are 20 minutes delayed already from the given time. We are inefficient in that sense. Okay. Any quick questions? Okay, no. So thank you very much for your patient listening on a holiday like Saturday, if at all it's a holiday for you. I understand that holidays are theoretical true, may not be practical to be a holiday, but thank you very much for joining us. And thank you very much for subscribing to the course, and I hope you'll enjoy the rest of the course. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you,
sir.
Thank you.
It was a great explanation that you proposed.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. It's excellent. So nice of you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.